hard time finding the time to sit down and watch it all the way through, so I watched it in like 3.5 parts, or 3.5 viewing sessions. But I enjoyed it. You know, I don't know exactly what I was expecting. I remember when it came out that a lot of people talked about it, and it seems to me that a lot of people had a lot of mixed feelings about it, but overall it seemed like it was kind of lackluster, not really the top of the line film that everyone was hoping it would be. Well, I guess because I went in with rather low expectations, it was actually pretty good. I enjoyed my experience, I should say. I did though have a lot of like questions, things I was like, well, that could have been different. Obviously, it's extremely problematic that Chris Pratt goes and he wakes up Jennifer Lawrence. Sorry, spoilers, I know, but also it's a 10-year-old movie, so if anybody does have issues with me spoiling it at this point, I feel like, you know, you clicked on the video and you should know by now there's going to be spoilers. But sorry for anyone who that may have offended. Late maybe, or though maybe. Spoiler warning. Anyway, it's problematic that Chris Pratt wakes up Jennifer Lawrence. That's not good. I mean, that in itself, waking up another passenger, I understand. I feel like I can put myself in that headspace. You know, you wake up on a tin can in the middle of space, and you're basically a century ahead of schedule. So you know for a fact you are going to die before you reach your destination. That would be pretty awful. And like, I was talking to a coworker about it, and you know, he was talking about being stranded on an island. Chris Pratt even brings that up in the movie. You know, if you're stranded on an island and you had the power to strand somebody else with you at the touch of a button or whatever, would you do it? Well, it's a little bit different though, because if, say, you crash in a ship or crash in a plane and you end up like Tom Hanks, cast away on an island, you can hold out hope that, you know, day in and day out, maybe an airplane will pass by and see you. Maybe a helicopter or a boat, a fishing vessel of some sort is going to come by and see you. Or at the very uttermost end of your capacity, maybe you can string together a raft and get off the island. You know, you can hold out a level of hope for escape. And even if it never pans out, you can also hold out hope that people are aware that you are missing and people are concerned and they're looking for you. So like, there's some comfort in all of that, right? However, in Chris Pratt's situation, he went on this voyage across the stars. At this point in time, already everyone that he knew back home has probably died. It's been 30 plus years, so if they haven't died already, they're certainly well into their older years. You know, he maybe had some nephews who were kids. I don't recall it saying anything about that. But even if he had children or nephews or nieces or other people who were like, you know, brand new babies when he left, they're going to be well into adulthood, and any siblings or parents are going to be old people now. So besides the fact that no one's going to hear from him for what, 15 or 19 years instead, before his message reaches Earth, and then it'll be 50 years before anyone or any message from Earth reaches back to him again. So he is alone. Nobody knows he's there alone, and nobody is gonna save him. So there is no comfort blanket there. Nothing to say, oh, I'll be okay. Nothing to say, someone's gonna fix this, someone's gonna save me. And he tries for a year trying to figure out how to fix his own situation, and nothing works. Nothing works, and he's just given up. I understand that. I understand the desire to wake another human up and say, hey, look, if I'm gonna suffer, I'm gonna at least do it not alone. So that is not the problem. And sorry if I've repeated myself in all that rambling. I'm obviously going without a script here. I'm just driving and talking through my thoughts. But my problem is that he wakes Jennifer Lawrence up because he sees her while he's drunk and depressed, and she's a pretty face. And then he obsessively searches out everything about her, and like it's creepy stalker level obsession. And then he's like, yep, I'll wake her up and I'll play it off as like, oh, it's an accident for a year. At least as I understood it, it was, a year before the truth came out, when Arthur's like, oh yeah, he was looking forward to it and yada yada yada. Like, that's awful. So it's like insult to injury. I am going to wake you up and not tell you that I woke you up. I'm just going to let you believe that it was an accident like mine. Like, obviously that would be a hard pill to swallow, to try and tell somebody, hey look, I woke you up, but here's why. But being straightforward with her would have been way better. I don't know, but even still, waking her up because he was obsessing over her is my problem. I feel like he had the capacity to search out all of her information, and he did that because he thought she was pretty. What he should have done, and this, I think, now, if ever this video happens to come across somebody who is like a psychologist or a pathologist, please correct me, because I am none of those things. But it seems to me like if he gave himself the task of, I'm going to search the manifest, I'm going to find someone in this ship, in this section of passengers, who can help me fix this situation, he could have searched it out. He'd have 5,000 people to search through, and just doing that would have given him he would have had an end goal in mind, which, while it's not the same as hoping that you're going to be rescued, it does have that sort of embedded in there, because he's searching for someone who can help him figure it out. Someone with engineering background or electronics background or whatever, something that would be beneficial to his situation. And whether that turns out to be a guy or a girl, doesn't matter, because he's not looking for a potential sexual partner. He's not looking for someone to just, give him comfort and warmth in the night. He's looking to save himself, essentially. Like, so going back to the stranded on an island example, you now have the capacity to search through a huge amount of people, and you can potentially find somebody to wish there on that island who has the ability to build you an escape boat, essentially, right? And you could do that, or you could just wish for someone who's pretty. And now I apologize if that comes across as me saying that that's all that Jennifer Lawrence has to offer. That is definitely not what I'm saying. I'm saying from Chris Pratt's perspective, prior to actually waking her up, essentially that's all she is to him. She's a pretty face, and then he starts learning about, oh, well, she's a writer, and she's clever and humorous and witty and yada yada yada. But ultimately, it's she's pretty, and I want to sleep with her. I don't want to be alone anymore. And that criteria is pretty icky, I guess. Like, I don't have another word. My vocabulary is limited in that regard, I suppose. But it does not sit right with me. And obviously, it's a movie, and it was made for drama, and it was made for, you wanted to hire these actors that were really the hot commodity at the time in Hollywood history. They're good actors, and they play their parts well, I feel like. At least I quite enjoyed their performances. But that's aside. We're getting into the weeds here. Sorry. Back to it, though. He could have gone through and rigorously searched. And ultimately, if he came across nobody that would help him out, then, flip a coin, okay? Flip a coin and say, hey, whoever the lot lands on, that's who I'm waking up, because I need someone. And I've looked and I can't figure out a better solution. That still would have been better than, oh, she's pretty, I'm gonna creepy get to know her and then wake her up and pretend like it's all fine. No, instead, now you'd have this whole backstory to show, like, look, I needed a partner, I needed a companion. It was not personal to you. I've searched everybody, and there's nobody who can help me out with this, but I need somebody. And if you want to beat me up for it, if you want to kill me for it, whatever. But I could not stand to be alone. Be straightforward with them. And, maybe that's easier to think than actually to do. And obviously that wouldn't work for a film, but that's my thoughts on the reality. Anyway, again, I've gotten way out of left field or whatever from what I wanted to talk about, but I needed to talk through that too. So I apologize if this is very rambly, but just talking through my thoughts on the film. All right, back to it though. She comes across, Arthur tells her the truth. She finds out, obviously she's mad and deeply hurt too, because like, you spent a year lying to me essentially and making love to me and treating me like I was this very special person, and all the while you've been keeping not just any secret. It'd be one thing of like, you never told Jennifer Lawrence about this girlfriend you had back on Earth who still sometimes crosses your mind. Like, that's kind of a, but like, if that's the case, hey, that's still all in the past. It's all done, and it has nothing to do with your encounters on the Avalon. But waking her up, that's a pretty big problem. Anyway, so I understand that she is very reasonably very upset. I wonder what's going on here. Oof. Looks like, just construction. Okay. Probably no biggie then. Anyway, where was I? So she finds out, she's mad, she goes off, and eventually, they make up because they have to. A crew member has now woken up, and they realize that stuff is seriously wrong with the ship. So they have to work together, and it's just them, and they have to save everybody, and yada, yada, yada. They make it work, fine, okay. Obviously, movie's got a movie, so I'm not going to get into all of the how this worked or how that worked, but they've now made up. They've made it fine between themselves, and she's forgiven him, and people can argue back and forth as to whether or not she should have, or whether he deserved it. I'm not getting into that. But what I am getting into is, like, besides the weirdness that the med bay had only one bed, essentially, for 5,000 passengers, even though they're only planning to be awake for 4 months, the last 4 months of the voyage, or 5 months in the case of the crew, like, that's a long time for 5,000 people to be interacting with each other with only one hospital bed. I mean, if you go to a small community with like 5,000 people, I would be willing to bet that more than one of those 5,000 people in a 4-month or 5-month period of time has had to go to the hospital. Now, granted, they're on like people in real life. They're living in real life in the world. There's germs, there's bugs, there's all sorts of things, just nature being nature, moving all around. And people being people, moving around in the world, can cause problems for themselves very easily. And on a ship, maybe not so much, because it's a very tightly controlled, sealed environment. There's not so much of that passing between people, but even so, I mean, how many people might wake up with stasis injuries, like the crew member guy? And I apologize, I don't remember his name. I've only watched the movie the once, and I watched it in stages. Anyway, he had problems, health problems, seemingly as a result of his hibernation chamber malfunctioning. Everyone else slept through the remaining 88 years. However, there were a lot of glitches, and who knows if somebody's bed might have had a problem. That's some pretty big lottery numbers. I mean, maybe not compared to lottery, but you know what I mean. Like 5,000 people, 4,998 other beds that potentially could have had some problem in it that wasn't maybe critical to the overall system, but still could have caused some eventual cascading health risk for the person hibernating there. Anyway, again, getting into the weeds, but one hospital bed, pretty silly and short-sighted. Either way, we'll go with it. There's only the one hospital bed that turns out can function as a backup hibernation chamber. she decides, when offered, not to go and hibernate for the rest of the voyage because she's forgiven him. She realizes she does love him and they can have a life together. Okay, that's charming, that's beautiful, it's cute. What it's not is practical. I mean, maybe it was a one and done thing. You turned it on and now it can't be turned off until the end of the voyage. But even that seems kind of silly. I mean, and all of this is I haven't even brought up that it's very silly that they didn't have some sort of revolving crew member always on deck and going around making sure everything is okay and checking with the computers in case the computer goes down or a system failure. You know, you should have a crew member always available and trading out and going to, you know, you wake the next person up, you stay with them for a couple of weeks, keep them company, update them on everything you found, and then you go to sleep. And they'll wake up the next one in a year or two or whatever, you know, and then everyone is monitored and safe. Anyway, again, off track. But if they would have done that, I mean, they were like in their 30s, so in perfect conditions as they were basically living in, and having access to a med bed that could basically fix anything but and even death, so fix anything. They could have lived out that, 30s, another 60 to 70 years they could have lived. That would have put them to 100 years old. They'd have been old, but they would have only missed the planet by a decade. Now, a decade could have easily been made up by sleeping in that stasis chamber for 5 years each. Now, it doesn't have to be 5 years in a row, and it could have even been up to 10 or 15 years each. If they each took a year or two in the stasis chamber, then they took a year or two together, and then swapped, then you're suddenly increasing or decreasing your aging by a lot. And they might actually be only into their 60s or 70s by the time they reached Homestead. And so they can still, have a cute, happy, retired life on the planet that they wanted to go to. Now, she, theoretically at that point, if she's in her 60s or 70s, reaching Homestead 2, still could have lived out another 10 years with him. If he passes away then, living on this new planet, then she goes, hey, well, I've got another decade to go in me. I'll hop in another cryo chamber and fly back to Earth, tell him my story, and even cooler, because now she's like aged and wizened and everything, She's lived a life on the ship that no one else will ever live, or hopefully never live. Anyway, movie's got a movie, and that wouldn't have flowed so well, but I think that would have been so cool and way more practical. So, if you have thoughts different or additional to, go ahead and tell me or message me or put them in the comments or whatever they say. And forgive me again, this is all still pretty new, and I do want to still focus on Lord of the Rings videos, but I am still building my confidence on making videos, and very obviously still building my technique and everything. So take it as you will. Hopefully, if you've made it this far, you can at least stand my ramblings and maybe even are interested. So I'd love to hear from you and get some feedback, and please keep it positive and polite. Thank you very much. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.